you're not a procrastinator. How do you get things done without guilt and shame? That's what we're going to talk about today, because you are someone who procrastinates sometimes and in certain contexts. Dr. Teplow, why am I not a procrastinator?
Only your mother knows. No, I'm teasing. But I think that is such a great question. People just suffer so much when they identify as a procrastinator, and that label, that negative label, characterizes their whole being, and that just isn't. And as long as you are, if you identify I am a procrastinator, then anything you do to do something else contradicts that self-image. And so it won't work. You can do certain, take a technique or a tip to get one task done maybe on time. But as long as you have that, I am a procrastinator, that is the lens through which you see the world, and that's the filter through which everything comes at you.
And that label, when you say that label reinforces that identity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And behaviors are temporary and they're changeable.
Absolutely, as our feelings. And so when we think, things, the only, what's core is who we are at our very core, the positive, capable person we are. And as long as you're getting out of bed in the morning, you are capable of something. And so what we want to do is to suggest that you say something else instead of I am. Be very watchful for how you self-identify, how you characterize your whole being. And when you catch yourself, I am a this or I am a that, saying, is that serving me or not? Does that really reflect who I am when I'm at my best? Of course, we all procrastinate sometimes and in some contexts, as you said. So then the job is to reframe and rephrase how you talk about procrastination.
So I am not a procrastinator. When you want to look for those items where you're reinforcing identity that is not serving you, is what you said. At the same time, there are times where you could identify with item like, I am a healthy eater, and reinforcing that identity. But for ones that are not serving you, you want to put that distance from you and be like, I am someone who procrastinates sometimes and in certain contexts.
Exactly. And then what's helpful is to be a detective and be disciplined to define when those times are that you do procrastinate. I procrastinate on Fridays when I'm in a hurry and I have to take out the garbage, but I know I just can't bring myself to do it. Yeah. So you want to know what the behavior is, when it happens, in what context it happens. And those contexts can be social. They can be, when so-and-so's around, I don't get to it. Or it can be environmental. When it's raining outside, I do procrastinate in going out for a run. So be a detective and describe not only what you're doing, but how you're doing it when it comes to noticing procrastination.
So one of the things that came up in one of our coaching sessions that was really interesting around what you just said around that is that the person was trying to develop the behavior to go outside in the morning, get some sunlight to help with their sleep, and just vitamin D, all the energy you get from being outside in the morning. And right now it's the winter in lots of places, and so it was cold and rainy. There was procrastination, or I'm just not going to do this, came up. And what was the solution out of that, or what the person thought about it was, what could I do instead that was like that? I could still sit in the window. It's not going to give me all the benefits, but I can still sit in the window and even visualize what it would be to do that, sitting outside in the feel of that warm sun. And that was that really stood out to me, being able to be psychologically flexible, and like, what could I do instead of this whole instead of the whole big project or whatever I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to what we say all the time in our coaching sessions is many paths to the same river. And so we may procrastinate in certain contexts. And then the question is, well, what might I do instead of that particular strategy? And so in that example you have is great. I'm used to exercising every day outside. It's raining. I don't want to go out in the cold rain. So instead of putting off exercise, well, I guess I'll get to it sometime. Say, well, what can I do instead. And then that's also an identity piece, is I'm an active person. So as an active person, what do I do that reflects that active person I am?
And even if it's not the thing that you said you were thinking you have to do or you should do.
Right. I also think that self-compassion is important. I mean, if it's cold and rainy outside, then it seems like a legit, not an excuse, but a totally legit reason not to want to go out and do it. So I think that there's some nugget of truth that, and you mentioned psychological flexibility, that we need to be processing moment to moment. Is this a priority for me now? Do I need to do this now? Can I do something else? Is it perfectly fine to not do it right at this moment? And that gets into what people procrastinate on. We talked about this last time, I think, also, when we teased about we can eliminate half your procrastination instantly. Is that we have all sorts of rules we've learned or messages that we've heard from other people, parents, teachers, bosses, whatever. We have internalized those often. And we think, oh, I have to have, a clean kitchen floor or whatever. Yes, it might be nice. But is it crucial to your taking valued action on what counts for you? Not necessarily. So that's the other thing I think to remember is how self-compassion. Ask yourself, how important is this really?
Yeah. And so this question about this statement that when we don't do, we saw someone who procrastinates sometimes and in certain contexts, how can we use that sometimes in certain contexts for us to be able to get things done?
I love that question. Thank you for asking it, because it brings up two concepts. One is exceptions and the other is instances. So when we talk about exceptions, we talk about, when are you getting things done in a timely way, things that you might usually procrastinate on. So if your problem is procrastination at, taking out the garbage, let's say, then ask yourself, well, when are times when I actually do take out the garbage in a timely way? And that is a illustration of the principle that nobody's perfect. Nobody even does their problem perfectly. So sometimes you don't take out the garbage for, it really needs to be done. And other times you do it. So look for exceptions. When are those exceptions? When you're not procrastinating. And what are you doing? And what's helping you to do it? So take into account the environmental context. It's sunny, or, somebody's coming over, a guest is coming over, or you have company, you have a friend to do it with, whatever it is. Again, be a detective, a disciplined detective, so that you really look for those exceptions to when you're not procrastinating in a particular context. So that's exceptions. The other is instances. When are you doing things in a timely way? And what does it matter to you? So this takes us to another level about your desired outcome and who you want to be. And it separates it from the strategies. I want to, if I don't want to procrastinate, what do I want to do instead? I want to be a person who takes valued action. I want to act on things that I really care about.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And so what difference would that make when you're taking timely action? And it's not just your performance, but what difference does it make in your life? What does it say about you? What does it enable you to project into the world? How do you see yourself?
So our clients really like when we go down this direction of, what difference will it make? And because when the feedback we get is that when they're in that moment, when they are procrastinating or not, or there's that friction of what they want to do, or there's something more appealing that they want to do, they ask them that question is, what difference will this make for this? How will this connect to my, I'd say goals, but really the outcomes and the difference that's going to make? Goals might be more common term, but it's really getting down that next level, as you were saying, of what difference will that make and what this outcome will be. And when they when they do the self-talk around that helps give that little extra nudge of motivation to start at least.
Yeah. And we know from Piers Steele's procrastination equation, which we'll be talking about in our next quest that's coming up very shortly, our procrastination quest, or procrastination to productivity quest.
Yeah, which we'll put the link in for that in our show notes.
Yeah. So one of the factors that contributes to either procrastinating or taking action is the value that you attribute to the task and the outcomes that task will deliver to you. And that goes back to, are you doing it? Does this really matter? And so when you value the outcome, because you ask what difference will it make, and you define a difference that makes a difference, then you're much more likely to take on that task, even if it's, boring, hard, or whatever.
On the flip side too, as well, when you are procrastinating on something, that's also a clue you might not value it. And so when you ask that question, what difference will this make for me? Oh, it's not going to make much difference at all. Then you're not really procrastinating. You're just the value that you assign to it is surfacing and saying, you know what, that's a should that's coming up, not something that I value.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. When you catch yourself procrastinating, the value that you attribute to it surfaces. So, yeah, and I think that can be so freeing, really relieve a lot of stress.
Freeing, yeah. Yeah, take away the guilt and the shame.
Yes. And then the second part is to be able to really own it. Because, of course, what will people think, that my house is messy or whatever? And I think my mom had a picture in her living room that said, if you've come to check out my house, like, it's not that you weren't welcome, but if you came to check out my house, look somewhere else. If you came to visit me, have a seat, let's have tea. And I
Yeah.
think that that's a hard part too, is to say, okay, I realize that I've internalized this rule and it makes me really uncomfortable to not follow through, even though I don't really value it. Then how do you sit with that ought to or should and say, yeah, that's something that I still feel uncomfortable about, but I just don't want to do it. I want to spend my time in a different way, doing something that's more valuable to me.
Yeah, like, just own it. I had a friend who, when I was asked me something, and I said, "Oh, this is what I like," but I qualified. I started qualifying it, like, but because of this, it's like, just own it, Glenn. Just own it. If you like it, just own it. That's something that's valuable to you, or that you enjoy, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, and you develop your sense of agency when you can own it, and especially in a social situation. Yeah, I always talk about kitchen floor because it's not that I'm not good with kitchen floors, but it just is important. I keep my counters clean, my kitchen floor. I don't wash as often as probably other people think I should, but then I just owned it. Said, yeah, that's who I am. And notice I'm saying that's who I am. Well, not really, but that's how it is,
That's
and
how it
that's not
is. Yeah,
important to me. That's how it
and
goes.
only
It's not important to me.
and owning that sense of agency self-reinforces, so that it makes it easier to do it over and over again in more difficult situations and contexts that are more challenging. Maybe you procrastinate. This one's a little bit harder than other ones. The more you have that agency and you own what you value and what you don't value, it becomes easier to say, oh yeah, you know what, I'm not procrastinating that. I just don't value that. And then it makes it easier to again, notice and take ownership of the things you do value.
Right. And I think you bring up a point about practicing. So practice on stuff that's super easy. Is it bringing in your paper by 8 a.m. or can you wait till 10 a.m.? Just
You
start
bring
to
your
see,
paper
say,
in.
yeah, it's not important to me. My paper can sit out there for 2 more hours. People, if I think the neighbors are looking at it, well, that's fine. They can look, but I'm okay with, having that. I'm okay with having even that little feeling of discomfort or whatever. It's just a feeling.
Right. Maybe it's mowing the lawn or something. I don't know. Getting the newspapers.
Yeah. Well, I do think, like, if my newspaper's out until the afternoon, what will people think? Like, why aren't you going to get your newspaper? I don't know.
Right. Right. Haven't had a newspaper for a decade. So let's do a practical situation for exceptions and instances. So an example of the bedtime procrastination. I need to go to bed at a certain time, but I've done everything for the day. Everyone else's things that they needed to get done. My work, maybe the kids, or made the dinner, all those things. And finally, it's at the end of the evening, and I should go to bed at this time, so I get my 8 hours or 7 hours or 9 hours, whatever's work for you. But this is my time now, and I want to watch Netflix or scroll through my TikTok or whatever whatever the thing is that they want to do for their time. How might we use exceptions and instances to manage this bedtime procrastination?
What are times when you have gone to bed, when it's been easier for you? That's an exception. And look really, really with great, fine detail as what are all of the factors that contributed to your being able to go to bed at the time that you didn't give into the impulsivity of the screen calling you. How did you do that? How did you resist that temptation? What were you valuing? What told you this was important enough that you did go to bed on time? And then ask yourself, what was the reward? What did I get out of it? So we know from Pierce Steele's procrastination equation that procrastination is a function of your sense of agency or expectancy that you can do something and valuing the task. And then impulsivity, giving into distractions, and the factor of reward. Either it comes for procrastination, it comes too late and too little. So then with exceptions, build that sense of agency. What did you do that enabled you to go to bed on time? Think of what are the skills you used? And then what was the value? What did you get out of it? And that's part of reward too. And then how did you avoid doing the impulsive scrolling or whatever?
Yeah, and for exceptions and instances, it's looking back when you did these things and that worked well for you. And
Yeah,
those
an
two,
instance. Sorry.
go ahead.
So instances also is not the instance of doing the strategy per se. It's the instance of when you experienced your desired outcome. So if I'm going to bed on time and getting adequate sleep, what is the result of that? I feel good. I feel rested. I feel energized. What difference does that make? You brought up the difference question. What difference does that make? Well, I'll be able to do things that really are important to me. I'll be present for my kids. I'll be working on things that are important to me that I know help people. So then you ask, okay, and so when are other times where you had that sense that you could connect with people moment to moment? You were very present. You could add as a result of doing things that I needed to do in a timely way. So it's we talked about many paths of the same river. It's not only that specific strategy, but we want to look at instances where you were living the life you wanted, being the person that you truly are.
That's interesting, and I think what the two things that I use out of that is to look forward to, okay, what will the difference will it make for me to wake up refreshed? And the days I don't do it, even I'm like, I remember the days I do wake up refreshed. So like, oh, remember those days, how good those days feel, and that has a impact on the behavior change in it going, especially that next night, but in going forward. Oh, keep every time to remember those times when I do have that moment. And the other thing that you talk about is rewards is, okay, sometimes thinking about that reward for tomorrow is too far away. So it's, how can I make my sleep environment so rewarding to go into the nice sheets, maybe a candle that smells well, or a nice book that I'm in the middle of reading. All those things have the reward to be much more immediate. And that also has helped me in those exceptions and instances and managing the reward.
Yeah. And also be mindful. This doesn't mean you have to sit in meditation. It means be mindful. And when you wake up in the morning, recognize, wow, what am I feeling? What am I noticing about myself that tells me what I did last night was good for me? It really worked. And that's a reward also.
Yeah.
And that's a small reward.
Yeah. And the noticing is at the root of all this. You have to notice that I might be avoiding or delaying doing something, aka procrastinating. You have to notice that, and then noticing what's your value. Is this valuable for me? What difference will this make for me? And if it's not very much of a difference and it's not valuable for you, then let that guilt and shame go away, because it's something that you want to do. Own it, and if it is something that you value, then then what difference will it make? How can I bring a reward closer? Take away some of the impulses. Keep reaffirming that, so I have that sense of agency because I own it.
Yeah. And I think also what we bring up, or what you're suggesting, is that we need to live in the moment, in the present, and that it's every moment we have a choice to make. And are what we choosing to do a valued action or not. And even if, you have a rough day and you got to go to bed at X time, and you choose at that moment, am I going to zone out for a while because it's important to me? And you say, okay, I will sacrifice a half an hour of sleep. I'll choose to give up my half hour, and I'll also put in some breaks so that I don't go 2 hours. I can do an app or something that shuts down your computer after half an hour, and you choose. So it's really being deliberate and being mindful.
Noticing and intention. That's
Yeah.
the center of everything we're doing for behavior change.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a fantastic place for us to wrap up. I wanted to note that the Procrastination to Productivity Quest transform avoidance into action for a healthier, more productive life. That quest is going to be starting next, the 21st is going to start it. And we'll have the link in the description for you to sign up for that. The Ultimate Guide to Getting Things Done Without Procrastination is another great resource we have. Again, that will be in the show notes here. And then also we have a downloadable action guide called How to Use Exceptions to Crush Procrastination. Basically everything we talked about today. If you want to learn more about our unique solution-focused approach and book a complimentary coaching session, visit staminalab.io. And if you found this video useful, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you, Dr. Teplow.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next time, remember, you are your own lab, you are your own experiment, and you are your own best coach. Be well.